Greetings, readers and friends. Harvey Michaels here. I'm thrilled to welcome you to our adventure into Danshui President Plunge, Book 1, Evacuate or Pay. It was an electrifying story to write, and I can't wait to share some with you today. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Your support means the world to me. Thank you kindly. Okay, here we go. Chapter 8. Over the Guandu Bridge now? Bali Police. Insane wind levels reduced Bali's traffic to nothing. Bali Police Department cars, never called back from patrol by Sergeant Bao, hunker out in the storm, all listening to the same FM station call-in news show. There is some reaction to a man's earlier call claiming he saw a submarine. Bali cops agree he's probably the same guy Sergeant Bao made an on-radio mockery of. You're on the air at Right Now Call-In News. Why don't they use helicopters with sonar buoys to find the submarine? The caller asks. Sure, a Bali officer laughs on the police radio. Let's send one of the Typhoon heavy helicopters. Where are those parked anyway? I know they keep those emergency Typhoon helicopters somewhere handy. They're always ready to go, another officer says, and then chortles loudly at the absurd notion, made funnier to him for hearing their precinct telephone call earlier played over the police radio. The Typhoon helicopters are always on call in their underground bunker. After this officer makes his joke, there is radio silence. The sergeant comes on laughing loudly and then catching his breath with a high moan, all on the radio. You guys are killing me. Just keep a lookout for that submarine. Maybe it's an amphibious kind that can come onto the beach. He sounds serious. China would love to send an invasion force under cover of the Super Typhoon. Pausing for effect, that officer laughs at his comment as a roar of wind seconds his high emotions. Paul can't believe what he's hearing. Either to calm themselves from witnessing Nauru firsthand or dreading the next accident they have to untangle, possibly their own, officers started bantering on the police radio. Without an authority reining them in, they keep joking on the radio. Paul Hu, the newbie veteran, the only one riding solo, reaches for his cruiser's radio. Yo, guys, we should tighten up on the discipline on the radio. Stick to business. What do you say? The radio is silent for a minute, then the sergeant comes on. Officer Hu, Danshui Port Police called for help. You're the rookie, so I volunteered you. They say, thank you very much. He chuckles with a sneering sound. Paul snaps back quickly. Over the Guandu Bridge now? That's crazy. There is no response from dispatch. Then finally, they asked for help, rookie. Paul grimaces and makes up his mind. Then I'm taking the Humvee. You can't take the Humvee. We only have one, and we have to keep it for emergencies. Paul thinks, if this isn't an emergency, then what is? He says, that's the deal. I only crossed that bridge in the Humvee. There it is. The first and last time Paul challenges his BLPD supervising officer. The sergeant jeers a last time before cutting the connection. Whatever, you're assigned to go help. Get over there and hold their hand. Paul Hu technically becomes the only officer assigned to the President Plunge case. Newsy Susie's story broke open. Later in the day, debates will bubble up and boil over, asking who should be officially assigned the case, as in officially gain resume career points, what branch, precinct, and officers in which police department. Newsy Susie is ecstatic with Bali PD, the gift that just keeps giving. She curses the killjoy named Officer Hu probably stopped future radio gaffes. Then she edits the last 30 minutes of their joking comments. News media. From the moment Susie's first breaking news report was broadcast, calls flood into call-in shows like never before. Many earliest calls are more like people phoning 119 emergency operators, frantically repeating a summary of the news. After listening to the first bunch of callers, the host of the top TV and radio call-in show, Call Talk, tells his audience, "Let's listen to what we know so far." Call Talk staff turns audio and half of the broadcast screen image over to their sister channel news station report, which is broadcasting the breaking story. They listen and hear the initial police band radio recorded words of brief summary and the news anchor's follow-up comments. Then the call-in host cuts off that broadcast and looks into the camera. "This is what we know. This is all we know." He quickly re-summarizes yet again what they just heard and encourages people to be calm before returning to answer the call-ins stacking up on hold. After Susie's second breaking news report releases with morning video of Wang Sanbao entering the hotel and the last audio minutes recorded from the security van, numbers of callers grow swiftly and overwhelm every call-in show's normal method of taking calls. There is no way they can let callers talk longer than a few seconds because so many people are trying to call in at the same time. "Please get your words out fast, everyone. We are cutting calls off at 15 seconds. Then shorter. "Sorry, we have to cut calls off at 10 seconds. Emergency protocols at Call Talk are enacted. A special event game plan ready in case of unexpected extreme event scenarios, such as a major Taiwan earthquake or such as this. The station manager sets up all available staff people answering phones with simple scripts to repeat in both Mandarin Chinese and Taiwanese dialect. Calls first go through a non-human preparatory recording which thanks the callers and explains some things. The recording claims they have caller ID, which will blackball any drunken callers or those who use profanity. Then an actual person speaks with each caller briefly, getting their location and encouraging them to be ready and get their words out in as short a time as possible. Newsy Susie's third breaking news report, matching the audio inside the van with video recorded on site, causes a further massive eruption of public expression. Telephone software tells call-in stations they are far from keeping up with caller volume. The Call Talk station manager tells the host to stop introducing callers. He was saying, "So-and-so from Fengyuan, you are on." Instead, he is told to only say, "Fengyuan, you are on." Then, "Fengyuan, speak." Now the host only says, "Your turn," with the caller's location showing in Chinese characters on the TV screen. The staff rapidly prepares the callers and stacks them up on hold for the live show. The host pushes the button to hang up on one and open the next caller's time after 10 seconds. "Your turn." Less attention to each caller doesn't slow down the tsunami of calls from people feeling overwhelmed. After the first wave of callers re-summarizing what everyone is finding out, a good many of the new calls are people emotionally breaking down for the family of James Yang and especially his son, Jimmy. Callers, one after another, are waiting their turn to sob out a wish for James Yang Jr. to perform well on tomorrow night's Taiwan Star Talent Search show. They echo the last word of his father, who called out in the screaming typhoon wind, literally, "Step on the gas," universally spoken encouragement to "Go get it, Jiao, Jimmy." Caller after caller say the same thing, sniffling in voices barely held together, and many are sobbing as they cry, "Jiao, Jimmy." To get more calls off the switchboard quickly, they announce, due to call-in volume for the next 10 minutes, we will only take calls to wish Jimmy well on the Taiwan Star Talent Search show tomorrow. If you want to say Jayo Jimmy, please call in now. For 10 whole minutes, that's all they hear. They handle over 100 callers in those 600 seconds. Sobbing voices, wailing voices, whispering voices, shouting voices, all simply reiterating Jimmy's father's words. Jayo, Jimmy. 10 minutes turns into 20 minutes because of a second rare natural phenomenon. The first, a super typhoon striking Taipei. The second is the famously masculine host losing his composure, now silently weeping. He only quietly thanks callers, 谢谢你, and punches in new callers. The stream of tears flowing down his face and neck meets his purple shirt collar, turning it a darker shade. Radio listeners understand what TV viewers see. The host's tendon, pulsing, flexed jaws, and rapid breathing efforts to control his emotions. Finally, an earphoned younger station manager comes over and takes the microphone from the host. With one arm around the host's shoulders, he looks at the camera and whispers into the microphone, I am Lord Jianrong, station manager. We will return to accepting all calls now, not just for Jimmy Young. Then his own eyes glass over, and in a cracking voice, he chokes out, Jayo, Jimmy. Some callers comment on reports of someone sighting a submarine turret. We should go after that submarine. Then, if there's one submarine, there might be a few. Momentum picks up for the bizarre story. Callers offer suggestions to the authorities, some not very practical or realistic. We should send out the sturdiest helicopters for typhoon rescue to find the submarine, one caller suggests. This is not the time to be overly cautious and hold back equipment. Why don't we use our bad weather speedboats? Get the Taiwan Navy involved right away, another caller offers. The Navy should send their drone boats to look for Wang Sanbao. They have drone patrol boats, the caller begins before the host cuts him off. No, they don't have drone patrol boats, not in Taiwan in 2016. You're confusing us with America or China or maybe the future. Taiwan's Navy doesn't have a herd of big boat drones to send. The steady stream of calls for Jimmy Yang continues. Your father was a great man. Jayo, Jimmy. The switchboard stays flooded with these calls. So sorry for you, Jimmy. Jayo. Ratings for the afternoon call-in shows are a fraction of those for the 24-hour news channel TV News Time. Expecting exceptional viewer numbers during the super typhoon, TV News Time's top evening news anchor came in early to be on air for a full 6 hours. Shen Meipei is the #1 news anchor in Taiwan with an acclaimed news magazine show on weekends as well. This woman is treated like a rock star wherever she goes. She is known for her tough persona and her shapely legs, which she reveals less than many other female news anchors. She comes up with controversial comments of her own. During news stories, most anchors simply read off scrolling text on a monitor. Shen Meipei also asks reporters follow-up questions on the air, which the reporters sometimes are embarrassed to have no answer for. Many Taiwanese viewers either watch her news show or don't watch any news. They trust her, and they like that she's easy on the eyes and a tough journalist at the same time. She had already been in the news anchor chair for an hour before the kidnapping story broke. When Newsy Susie's first report came out, Bali PD Sergeant Bao's short radio recorded summary of what he knew to have happened, anchor Shen Meipei reported the event with poised professionalism. Her voice became appropriately serious, and her sentences flowed shorter and faster. Very few cue cards were up for her to read because the news was so raw. The skilled anchor restated what they knew and reiterated what they were waiting to find out. When the phone conversation between James and his silent wife was first played on Susie's second breaking news report, with only the early morning video of Wang Sanbao's hotel arrival, the voices were easily made out, though typhoon winds raged and screamed in the background. The news anchor watched the camera and a TV screen just below the camera for her to see. She searched for some extra detail, the same as most citizens were doing all around Taiwan. After the first time listening, she reported that both potential sources, the hotel and the port police, were not commenting at all. She mentioned that Taipei Central PD and Newsy Susie commented, but only to say no comment. This situation is all new. It just happened, she repeated to the viewers. All we know is what is in this news report. Government Minister Wang Sanbao was abducted from a corporate meeting at the Fulan Hotel and apparently driven to the seawall behind the Danshui Fisherman's Wharf. There, despite Super Typhoon's Noru's worst ever raging, Wang Sanbao's driver was ordered at gunpoint to somehow drive the van into the sea. Now we will replay this recorded telephone conversation between Wang Sanbao's driver and his bodyguard's wives, who are oddly silent during the conversation. The news anchor unnaturally turned to a different camera view. She held a finger to one ear as she listened to a news producer somewhere telling her something. Mei Pei turned and reported quickly, intensely. Her forehead between her eyes creased for the first time. We just learned that the wives were also held captive at gunpoint and knife point inside the driver's home. Now we know the reason the women remained silent in the phone conversation. They were taped to chairs and their mouths were taped over. She heard more in her earpiece. The driver's mother-in-law, in a video call to the van, had her finger mostly severed to punish the driver for making a demand. Sun Mei Pei turned to face yet a different camera. Skin between her eyes still furrowed. She read a cue card, a disclaimer of caution. Please be warned and take children from the room. The recorded phone conversation may be disturbing to hear. A giant screen TV showed Newsy Susie's face logo monitor before her same report, with the same audio ran once again behind the news anchor. Sun Mei Pei was staring with slightly furrowed eyebrows at the screen under the camera lens facing her. When the camera came back on, the tough news reporter, Sun Mei Pei, looked like a different person. Her inner eyebrows were raised, and her outer lips were pulled down and quivering. She blinked back tears before plaintively crying out, bending at the waist where she placed one hand. The famous hard-nosed news anchor stayed bent over, waving her other hand at the camera to turn away. In a quiet voice, she cried over and over, "What a Tian! What a Tian! Oh my God! Oh my God!" She saw the camera was still on her. She stood back straight and tugged her shirt down and sobbed uneasily through clenched teeth. 3 clear streams of tears were pouring down around fluttering nostrils, running down and dripping off her perfect face. The studio had nowhere to go. There were a few on-site weather reporters out in the city, ready to be filmed hanging on something or tied at the waist, bravely dangling in the high winds. But at the moment, the storm was blowing much too intensely. Since there was no other anchor there and no reporters were queued up for the on-scene reports, the pitiful anchor was stuck on the air live, looking right and left for relief. The camera was intensifying Sun Mei Pei's emotions. She needed to get away to collect herself. Finally, a weather person was dragged from his makeup station and put in as an anchor. Many viewers across the country and many others tuned in on satellite TVs in China and America broke down emotionally along with the popular news anchor. Shun Mei plopped in place at the makeup desk and took sips of water while stylists worked quickly to get her makeup back together. Just wipe it off, she said, back to her composed self again. I'm all right. Just get me back out there. As she has worked on, her producer came up alongside her, patting her shoulders, coaching her. Don't worry if you cry, but cry like the #1 anchor. He shook her neck gently. What does that mean? She looked ready to break down again. Cry honestly and recover quickly so you get back to your anchoring. The viewers are your friends, right? Your family even. She nodded wanly. Yes. So share this history with them. Be their news anchor. Weeping is okay. Be their anchor. Shun Mei Pei. He gave her a handkerchief and stepped back, looking at her expectantly. She was back in 3 quick minutes with redder cheeks and a folded handkerchief in her hand. She remained composed for 10 minutes. That's when Howard and Mariana's video of the event was released, dubbed with the phone conversation. Everyone knew the dubbing was correct when dim flashes from the gunshots in the video matched the gunshot sounds on the radio. Paul who? Paul parks his older Taiwan-made Luxgen squad car on the street in front of the Bali precinct motor pool next door, down from the office. He doesn't go inside the BLPD precinct, but has his sometimes patrol partner, who likes to be called Rocky, bring out the keys to the Humvee. Sorry to hear about your troubles. Rocky hunches over in the violent wind gusts and shouts to be heard, holding out the Humvee keys to Paul. Paul takes the keys and points to the water rising in the motor pool parking lot. The drains are a natural collector of neighborhood leaves and debris and apparently were never cleared off before the typhoon. Tell Sergeant Bao the lot is flooding. Okay, be safe, Officer Rocky shouts, backing away. Paul is pretty sure Rocky didn't understand what Paul said, and he decides to line message the sergeant directly. In his rain poncho, Paul feels like a kite being blown across the small water pool. Make that a sailboat, he thinks, as he struggles to keep his feet wading against pounding wind in rising water there. He gets soaked up to his knees, but he's thankful he's not wetter. Now, as the warming Humvee engine rumbles in neutral, he pecks out a 2-sentence message to his sergeant. Once out on the street, he calls his wife. They don't speak long, both of them holding back for the other. Paul only says he is more concerned than ever about his precinct, skipping the day's details, including his next move. He shares his worries for all the people in New Taipei before Saturday gets here. Hope is proud he will help many who need it most. They are a close couple after suffering through a demeaning ejection from a central Taiwan precinct 8 years ago. Each precinct transfer tested them, and they become a tighter ship as a husband-wife team. They hang up, each nodding in relief. Paul exits the BLPD motor pool 10 short minutes after his boss told him he volunteered to help at Danshui. As bad as the typhoon condition is, the barometer is still lowering. The small Humvee barometer is in the red zone, below 950 millibars. Paul shakes his head, mustache tingling at the thought that this storm could rise in intensity. It's already blowing far worse than anything he ever saw. The surrounding armor steadies the ride and steadies Paul, but he knows no one outdoors in Super Typhoon Noru is safe. The wide Humvee handles stiffly but solidly on the streets of Bali, heading toward the Guandu Bridge. Squeaks are piping in from the driver's side rear window from hardened rubber seals that need replacing. Impossibly strong wind is raging from behind the Humvee on the long straightaway to the bridge. Paul wills his whitened knuckles to relax on the steering wheel. This must be the typhoon peaking. Paul mouths the words and his mouth stays open. Almost all the road's center divider trees are uprooted or broken, but branches in Paul's lane aren't big enough to impede the Humvee's way. He passes a 7 on his left and sees at least 10 people looking traumatized, staring bug-eyed from inside the convenience store at the otherworldly storm winds flooding at mind-boggling speeds down the street along tunnels of shooting horizontal-driven rain. They show no surprise or even awareness of seeing a police Humvee motoring by. The violent sideways river of storm winds captivates them, terrorizes them. "This is crazy," Paul whispers and tugs on his mustache. The nearer Paul gets to the bridge, the fewer buildings there are to help blunt the insane winds. He spends a second wondering if multiple jumbo jets taking off together would sound as loud. His pulse quickens the closer he gets to the high exposed bridge. Central PD Crisis Center. "Colonel Han, a 119 distress call has come from on top of the Guandu Bridge, the bridge that crosses Danshui River to Bali." Captain Tan, the traffic department head, shakes his head gravely. A couple in a compact car is stuck in the middle of the bridge. He presses his Bluetooth closer to his ear to hear better. "See how quickly we can bring up traffic cams on that bridge." The colonel stands from his seat and paces to the far side of the room. "What kind of winds are they exposed to up on that bridge?" he asks anyone. "When we get a camera feed, we'll see for ourselves," Captain Tan answers, and then covers his mouth to speak quietly to an officer seated next to him before answering Colonel Han. "For sure they are getting steady Category 3s and at least some 4s and possibly 5s. The bridge is 25 meters in the air, sir." "What do you mean, Captain? The wind must be in the mid-teens, much stronger than a 5. The colonel pushes the glasses up on his nose and looks doubtfully at Captain Tan. "Oh, sorry, sir. I was referring to the wind rating system they use for hurricanes in the USA. Last summer in Taiwan, the strongest winds ever were recorded there, a 17, the highest number on the Beaufort scale we traditionally refer to. However, in the Saffir-Simpson scale, that 17 is a high 3 or low 4, and they have a 5 on that scale too. So you're saying this typhoon today is over a 17? I would not be surprised, sir. It's the 3rd super typhoon this year. We should expect higher numbers. And if we want to identify the wind strength today, we need another scale. He quickly found a photo illustration of the Saffir-Simpson scale on his laptop, and the projector beamed it onto the back wall screen. You can see a 3 is roughly up to 200 kilometers per hour, a 4 goes to 250, and a 5 is over 250. He put the red dot from a laser pointer just above the center. This is how big they measured the strongest winds in 100 years in Taiwan. Everyone saw the laser pointer stop merely halfway on the scale of measured extreme storm wind strength. God help us, the colonel said to no one in the room. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the reading this time. Please leave a comment if you did. What did you think? Remember, sharing is caring, so please do tell a friend who would like to join us here. If you are enjoying the journey, I'd be so grateful if you would be a supporter and pick up a copy of Danshui President Plunge on Amazon and leave a review. Until next time, take care. I look forward to seeing you here again. See you then.